Welcome to Englewood After Dark, Episode 2, Burning Bridges. Englewood After Dark is a serialized horror audio drama, and for best experience we recommend starting with Episode 1. Content warnings for this episode include discussions of murder and suicide, and conspiracy talk and paranoia.
Hey there, intrepid mystery lovers, and welcome back to another episode of Englewood After Dark. I'm your host, a suave detective with a tragic past, and this is my co-host, a femme fatale with a heart of ice.
Ah yes, your tragic backstory. You once forgot to buy tickets to Hamilton and then complained about it for weeks on end.
That heart of ice never thaws, does it?
Let it go, Finn. Let it go. I'm Eve Pemberley, and this is my theatrical co-host, Finn Nightingale.
Tickets to Oklahoma in Space are still on sale in the campus shop this week.
This week on Englewood After Dark, we're returning to the murder farm to unpack our campus's most pervasive urban legend, and to shed some light on what really happened back in the 80s, where Professor Ludwig Schmidt murdered 3 innocent young women before apparently taking his own life.
Apparently being the operative word there, as Schmidt's fingers had been broken, making it pretty unlikely that he'd use that hand to shoot himself in the head.
We had quite the laundry list of suspects, from the classic "the wife did it," to the best friend, to some more outlandish theories about demonic possession.
Oh, we're gonna get into that tonight, don't worry.
Yeah, whenever you tell me not to worry, the opposite happens. You know that, right?
Pavlovian responses aside, Eve, you want to go through the suspects?
Right. The wife, Isabella Schmidt, found the body, had a motive of her husband was a really creepy serial killer, and no real alibi. Hell hath no fury and all that.
That's because all furries go to heaven, Eve.
That's just dogs.
Well, the third most commonly adopted persona is a husky.
I hate that you know that, and I said fury, not furry.
Then there's Elliot Quinn, erstwhile best friend. Neighbors saw them getting into an argument. No alibi either.
There's a lot of that going around. And of course there's always Finn's wild theory that a demon did it.
I come armed and ready to defend that point, my queen.
Ominous. We have a special guest today, XX Burning Bridges XX. That's too much to say, Finn. I can't keep saying it every time. A former Englewood student, conspiracy theorist, and our first interviewee for the case. Burning Bridges is here today to discuss any relevant information on the case, but we'll get into that later.
That's right. But before we move on to our highly anticipated first interview, it's time for Reading Rainbow with Eve Pemberley.
Today we're discussing the book Blood-Soaked Soil by C.J. Briggs in a bit more detail. Returning listeners may remember it as the book Finn used as the foundation to his demonic house of cards last week.
Hey, that theory was actually established off the back of my sparkling intellect. And Burning Bridges' theories.
Right, well...
Oh my god, you've added tabs. And post-it notes?
I like to be thorough.
You got bullied in high school, didn't you?
As opposed to you, boy who played magical Mr. Mistopheles in no less than 3 high school productions of Cats. In hindsight, your vast knowledge of fairy facts is no longer surprising.
And I killed that performance every time. It made me fast and nimble. Bullies never stood a chance.
Well, digging into CJ's work a little more, we're on a first-name basis now apparently, I uncovered a few other leads that I wanted to discuss. This wasn't a crime of complete passion, it was a crime designed to look like another crime. They needed to be calm and collected to execute a crime like this. Maybe even someone who had done something like this before. I'm gonna go out on a limb here.
Oh no, please, climb right on out there.
I think whoever killed Schmidt did it to protect themselves. That's why it was arranged to look like a suicide. If we're assuming he was killed because he killed those girls, then why not just call the police? I think it's because whoever did it feared what Schmidt might say when he was arrested. That he knew something worth killing him for.
An accomplice?
It could still be the wife, or Elliot. I'm not saying it wasn't them, but if it was one of them, maybe they killed him to prevent their own secrets from being brought to life. Also, if he was killed by his accomplice, wouldn't that explain why the crime scene was so perfect? They had experience in cleaning up bodies.
Partner would also explain how they all went missing without anyone seeing them. One abductor? Maybe you could fight them off long enough for someone to see you, but two? Less likely. Especially if that accomplice is a demon.
I'm ignoring that last part, but you're right. Two people would make it easier, and it would also explain Schmidt's death-suicide. With Schmidt having taken his own life, the accomplice gets off scot-free.
I mean, doesn't that pose another question? If there was an accomplice, why did they kill Schmidt? No one was onto him.
Your friend Burning Bridges said it himself. Schmidt had begun to act irrationally, smashing mirrors, drifting off into space in the middle of class. He was a liability.
You're beginning to sound like a proper conspiracy theorist. I couldn't be more proud.
So I looked into it and gathered some evidence. Please, Finn, stop dramatically growing. As far as I can tell, Isabella had alibis for some of the abductions. Apparently she was attending a conference 2 towns over when Angela was abducted.
That sounds like an alibi to me.
Yeah, it sounds exactly like the alibi she gave to her whereabouts when her husband died.
You think she was lying both times?
Maybe. I could definitely paint that picture.
So you still think the wife did it?
I haven't ruled out Quinn either, for one particular reason. I did a search for Elliot Quinn in the local newspaper archives, and I found a marriage announcement in 1985. He lives 2 towns over, and guess who he's married to?
Oh, the wife and the best friend?
Yep. She's Isabella Quinn now, and they ended up having 3 kids together.
Giving him plenty of motive to want Schmidt gone.
Especially when, as far as I know, Elliot's alibis for the other abductions are basically non-existent.
Shady behavior.
Could be, and nobody thought to ask him at the time, so...
Welcome to the land of loosely based hypotheses. We hope you'll enjoy your stay.
Right, because me making logical assumptions based on what makes sense is the same thing as you deciding that a change in demeanor means demonic possession.
We're losing her to fanciful delusions, Doctor!
I need more sugar. Give me one of those.
And that concludes Reading Rainbow with Eve.
At least for now. Hopefully I'll be able to track down CJ Briggs before next week and get some more answers. I'm surprised and a little suspicious that they never brought up the possibility of a partner.
This week on another episode of Bounty Hunter.
Haha, the publishers, unsurprisingly, aren't being too forthcoming with CJ's email address, but I have my ways.
Ominous.
Always.
There's always the other alarming possibility.
Which is?
That it was someone else all along. The accomplice, I mean.
The demon again?
How's it all coming along?
Professor Hannessy!
We're doing well, Professor.
I found something in the faculty lounge I thought you might like. A faculty photo from 1983.
Thank you so much, Professor.
The 2 of you seem to be busy, so I won't bother you long. Good night, Finn and Eve.
Oh, thank you so much, Professor!
Shut up, it's called being polite.
It's called being a teacher's pet.
Holy shoulder pads, Batman. The 80s were a time.
Nice redirect. Wait, there he is. That's Elliot Quinn. And beside him is our boy Schmitty.
Who's that?
Looks like a TA?
She seems familiar, and awfully close to our boy Schmitty. Ew, where is his hand?
And she looks a lot like the other victims. Weird.
Creepy. I'm gonna look into this. Susan in the dean's office owes me a favor.
Wait, she does? Why?
I'm not at liberty to divulge that information.
Well, that aside, time for me to take center stage.
Please don't plug Oklahoma again, Finn.
Don't need to. You just did it for me. Tickets still on sale.
Finn.
Right. Well, we've had Eve's Reading Rainbow. It's time for Finn's Occult Corner.
Please tell me you don't have your Ouija board in your bag.
I don't have a Ouija board in my bag. I have tarot cards.
I don't know what I expected after your threat last week.
Me neither. But that's for much later. For now, I'm gonna get you, my favorite skeptic, up to speed on the woo-woo lingo. Malicious spirits are emotionally aroused people who died suddenly or violently. They function kinda like imprints of people that are stamped onto a place or object.
That sounds like basic ghost mumbo-jumbo from some B-rated horror flick. So your source is Google?
No, my source is a medium who works on campus. She has to remain anonymous.
Okay, sure, but none of that fits with our boy Schmitty, right?
Right, that's what I said. But when I described all the facts of the case to her, she seemed concerned anyway and told me it could be a more powerful entity at work.
Your demon again.
Could be, if that's what we want to call it. And it could still be out there on Schmidt's farm, lingering, waiting for the perfect new host to corrupt to their whims and needs. A new vessel to wreak havoc on the world.
Speaking of which, we're fast approaching our scheduled interview time, so we'll have to delay Finn's Occult Corner. We'll see you lovely listeners after this quick commercial break. Don't go anywhere.
This time on Missed Connections, we have a lovelorn listener in search of his lost love. Let's help these two lovebirds to reconnect. His plea begins. You were the tousled guy in the paint-splattered jeans buying a single glazed donut. I was the guy in the black hoodie who bumped into you. You offered me tickets to some play about space. I got lost in the sound of your voice. You left before I got your name, but I know I'll be seeing you soon. If you recognize this soul, or if you are this person, reach out to our campus Facebook page and make a connection today. It's never too late to find love.
Finn, do you have a stalker?
Why don't you go straight to stalker? Maybe it's an innocent crush or a healthy appreciation.
Ah yes, the healthy appreciation of a serial killer.
Moving on. Hello and welcome back, intrepid mystery lovers. As promised, we're coming at you with a hot, sizzling, spicy interview with the mystifying, the mysterious, the one and only XX Burning Bridges.
XX.
Burning Bridges, who has asked to otherwise remain anonymous, is coming to us live from his office in an undisclosed location. Burning Bridges? Hello, Mr. Burning Bridges? How are you doing?
I don't think he's connected, Finn.
Bridges can hear us, but he's trying to get his microphone to work. I think he's just called his son to help.
Like this. Oh, I think that did it. Thank you, Thank you, boy.
Bridges, good to see you. Or hear you. Good evening. Can I call you Bridges?
That works fine, Mr. Nightingale. And good evening to you too, Miss Killjoy.
Good evening.
Thank you for joining us, Bridges. As you know, we've asked you here due to your association with Englewood in the 1980s, and your theories about Schmidt. To start things off and to set the scene, what can you tell us about yourself? We here at Englewood After Dark respect your privacy and won't share anything you want kept secret.
Valerie chewed you out after last week's ad read, didn't she?
I barely escaped with my life, Eve. Turns out that when you order 100 surplus copies of a book, you have a lot of leeway to use some as projectile weapons. But I digress. Bridges, let's hear it.
I am Burning Bridges, which I can assure you is a name that came back to haunt me. I would prefer my identity to remain anonymous, but I can reveal that I did in fact attend Englewood University in the year 1984. And I was a student of the very same Professor Ludwig Schmidt. It was certainly one of the more interesting periods of my life.
If you give away too much, you'll get them knocking at your door.
Sorry about that. Please continue, Mr. Bridges.
I'm afraid Mr. Nightingale is quite right. They're likely listening right now.
Oh, flip.
Excuse me?
You heard me, Miss Pemberley.
I'm out. I'm gonna drink.
Mr. Bridges, can I just say that I am thrilled to be hosting a guest with your experience and breadth of knowledge. But as much as I want to know who they are, I'm an actor, and I appreciate a good narrative. Please, if you would, regale us. Set the scene. It's 1984, Englewood University. What's school life like? What's the atmosphere?
It was quiet. Back then. It doesn't get too loud in towns like Englewood. Not normally. We didn't talk about the economy. We didn't talk about the Cold War. We kept a simple life. The talk of the town was your usual sports teams and local events, gossip about this or that neighbor, job prospects out in the big wide world. Big dreams in a small town.
Huh. That sounds very tranquil. But how long did that last?
Oh, it was constant. You would be surprised at how quickly this town forgets.
Of course he likes Finn, two kindred spirits.
The mic caught that. What do you mean, forget? Like, minds being erased? Memories edited?
Nothing quite so dire. Englewood, like a lot of small towns, is proud of its identity and heritage. They like things to stay the way they are.
But what about the disappearances?
Well, there's the thing. I think we all remember the disappearances quite clearly. The campus was well and truly shaken up. You can't ignore a thing like that. What I'm trying to say is, people just tried to forget when all was said and done. To go back to normal.
Well, what was that like at the time? The shaking up?
Jess was a slow burn. It was mostly confusion at that stage, since she disappeared overnight. And Marcus, he was... Sure, you could strike up a conversation with him in passing, but it was hard to get anything of substance out of him. Jess was a nice girl. I suppose she must have seen something in him that we didn't. It wasn't offensive, just not good company. Anyway, most of us just assumed she left him and skipped town. A friend of mine at the time wondered if she was pregnant. Maybe she panicked and ran away. I thought it was a family emergency. That made sense.
And when she didn't come back?
We all made up our reasons at the time. Honestly, we were more focused on Marcus than Jess. Her disappearance drove him to his wit's end, and that led to all kinds of theories. Maybe he was abusing her. Maybe he just lost it and she ran away to get distance from him. He drove away most of the friends he had, which is a damn shame, because he was right. He knew someone had taken her. Maybe if we listened, we would have known who.
And nobody knew she was dead until 1984?
Seemed like it. It was harder to keep track of people in those days, so we weren't too worried about it all. Now Angela, on the other hand, that was something.
I read that there were search parties for months.
Months? It's hard to put a number on that. Angela lived a busy life and she liked her schedule, so everyone knew something was wrong when she didn't show up after training. It was a whole community effort, but only her friends and family kept looking consistently for that long. Some friends and I were wandering along the edge of a creek the day after she went missing, looking for discarded belongings or pieces of clothing. 2 days later, we were trawling through that same creek with a rake and looking for a body. Seems heartless to say, but most of us had given up after a few days. After that, most of us were concerned about the perpetrator. There was a weird energy on the outskirts of town. You didn't walk in rural areas alone for months afterward. You got that feeling something was watching it from the tree line.
Couldn't that just be paranoia? Especially considering the circumstances and the rumors.
What are you talking about? Schmidt was out there killing people. It isn't paranoia if there's actually a killer on the loose.
Schmidt is a person, not a thing. Suspecting somebody is watching you is a healthy fear. Suspecting something is paranoia.
We'll see about that. Please, Mr. Bridges, continue. What about Laura?
Laura, God, that one was a real mess. That was. The campus was shut down for 2 days as police combed the area. Since Laura disappeared so suddenly, people started bringing up Angela again. I remember the university telling us to stop comparing the two, to let the police investigate and come to their own conclusions. That didn't stop us from pointing fingers. One of the girls in the orchestra, she'd played on the same team as Angela. She got raked over the coals by the student body and police alike for her proximity to both victims. Word is, she dropped out and moved towns.
That's horrible. The students hounded her even after her name was cleared?
The students were all stirred up and needed to point fingers at someone. I think Nadia only spent a couple of hours in the police station before they released her. She must have had a solid alibi. Of course, that didn't stop students from doing their own detective work and digging up her dirty laundry. A damn shame that, because it wasn't long after she left that the truth came out.
Schmidt's dark and inevitable end.
Indeed. It wasn't an easy time, particularly for his students. I'd been taking Schmidt's class at the time of Jess's disappearance, so I was grilled by the police, along with dozens of others. I always regret not telling them what I saw.
You withheld information from the police? Why would you do that?
Why else, young lady? Because just like you, they wouldn't have believed me. Tell me, how would you explain to the police that your professor was possessed by something?
Yes, I knew it.
Mr. Bridges, exactly what did you see that leads you to believe that the professor was possessed?
Something was wrong about that man. It happened a month or two before Jess went missing, I think. He just changed. Even his course seemed to swerve around the same time.
So we've heard, unconvincingly, Schmidt was a fan of...
Kant.
And we're led to believe that this fixation didn't survive Schmidt's behavioral changes?
Didn't survive. It was eradicated. We never touched on Kant again. I remember Professor Schmidt being much more energetic than we were accustomed to. He was always quiet, to the point where sometimes we had to raise our hand and ask him to speak up. He was looking at his board so often, sometimes we had to clear our throats and get his attention. He gave you the impression that he didn't like making eye contact with you. Most of us were fond of the change, of course. He was easier to hear and engage with, though his gaze felt a little heavy sometimes. He'd smile, but it felt like he was smiling through you, if that makes sense.
Considering Schmidt's personality change, sociopathy doesn't seem too outside the realm of possibility. What exactly inclines you towards a supernatural explanation when a natural one would suffice?
For one thing, while everyone seemed to appreciate the professor's change of tune, some seemed more eager than others to stay close. The flies. There was something wrong about the flies.
There was an infestation?
Not literal flies, no. A group of wealthy students, maybe 7 or 8 of them. We called them the flies because they stuck to him like flies stick to shit. Or flies to Schmidt, as the joke went. The flies would always sit up front of the class and hang around afterward to ask him questions. They seemed to congregate together. Overnight, this group of several wealthy students decided that they wanted to hear everything Schmidt had to say. They changed as suddenly as he did. It wasn't normal. And they defended him at every turn, too. Schmidt developed a strange habit of staring off into space. If we tried to grab his attention, one of the flies would snap at us, tell us that Schmidt was busy thinking.
And sociopaths are known to be quite charming. They're able to speak insincerely and flatter others and manipulate them, particularly if these were wealthy students. It would be advantageous to get into their good graces. I'm sorry, but I'm only seeing more evidence for a psychological disorder.
It was more than that. We joked on a couple of occasions that the flies were like a flock of Plato's to Schmidt's Aristotle. A band of dedicated followers who wanted to bathe in the professor's wisdom and share it to others. We were very wrong. In fact, the flies didn't want anyone else to have anything to do with Schmidt. Another student approached Schmidt after class to ask a question, and the flies surrounded him on his walk home. They didn't like anyone talking to Schmidt, and they made sure the students knew it.
Any response to that, Eve?
No comment.
If you want first hand, I can give you first hand. I approached Schmidt myself one day. It wasn't after class, though. It was late evening one night. I was passing through campus and saw the light on inside his office. I used the opportunity to get inside and ask my question without prying eyes on me, and...
Please, take a seat.
Aren't you cold in here, Professor?
Is it cold?
Well, I wanted to talk to you about my essay.
Did you now?
Yes. I wanted to ask if you had any recommendations for more modern books on utilitarianism.
Are you familiar with Anarchy, State, and Utopia? You'll find Nozick presents some compelling insight on the topic. Rather strange, your interest in utilitarianism. After you burnt all of those bridges.
Excuse me?
Your friends, those lovely young men who sit at the front of my class.
I have to go. Thank you, Professor.
No, thank you.
Sulfur!
And I quote, "God forbid a man enjoy an egg sandwich in an air-conditioned room."
I think I know the difference between an egg sandwich and sulfur, Miss Killjoy.
Give it to me straight, Bridges. You were there. You're a first-hand witness to Schmidt throughout this murderous ordeal. What do you think happened? Bridges? Are you still there?
Please carefully consider what I have to say next. I don't think a thing, Mr. Nightingale. I only know. I know Schmidt was communicating with something beyond the mundane world. And I know he had accomplices. And I know these accomplices did not die with him.
Okay, that's quite enough, Mr. Bridges. This has quickly transformed into a campfire horror story, so we're going to have to end this interview now.
Eve, seriously? Come on!
It's quite all right, Mr. Nightingale. It's best I stop here. I'm afraid if I told you any more, a certain fly on the wall may not appreciate what you know.
Please stop enabling him.
Thank you for having me. It feels good to unpack some of that. Good evening, Mr. Nightingale. Miss Pemberley. Stay safe.
Well then, on that particularly ominous and melodramatic note, let's... Oh god, he's creating a conspiracy board. For heaven's sake, roll the ad break. Hello there, dear listeners. It's time once again to highlight a comment from our own ever-growing audience. This one comes from user Tequila Mockingbird on our Twitter page. Hey, if Eve really wants proof that ghosts exist, she should come and spend a few nights in Sycamore Hall. All sorts of paranormal activity, especially in the attic. The place is completely locked off, and yet so many times I've heard creepy laughing and groaning coming from the ceiling. A couple of things there. 1, love the username, grateful. 2, I hate to be the one to burst your bubble, Tequila Mockingbird, but let me just solve that for you right here and now. I live in Sycamore Hall, and despite them insisting the attic is closed off, the lock on the door leading up to it is completely busted. Those sounds are other residents sneaking up there to fool around. You may ask yourself, why would people fool around in a dirty, spider-infested attic? But I'd counter it with, why would people fool around at a rundown farm where a sociopath killer did some weird, gross things to students? Horny people do not make good decisions. If you would like me to debunk any supposedly paranormal, demonic, or otherwise spooky things, go ahead and tweet us at Englewood Dark with the hashtag completely sane explanations. That's all. Till next time, dear listeners. And now, back to the show. Okay. So I managed to wrangle the markers away from Finn. We should be safe from the conspiracy board for at least another episode.
You know what it's time for now?
Oh no.
Oh yes, Eve. It's time for Finn's Occult Corner. But for real this time.
Alright, Finn, go ahead and play with your cards.
My dear Lady Killjoy, you dare mock the power of the tarot cards?
You're right, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be so quick to judge the enigmatic and all-knowing ways of the tarot cards. Now, were these all-powerful artifacts of legend produced by Hasbro or Mattel? And does that make a difference on the astral plane?
The astral plane cares not for the makers of the cards, Eve. Only that a vessel has been provided to...
Finn, if you're really going to do it, just do it. We really are short on time now.
Alright. So there are 5 suits in each tarot deck.
I thought you said these weren't playing cards.
Actually, they used to be playing cards, but now with the major arcana, there's a lot more of them. To simplify, in a basic tarot card reading, you draw 3 cards. These cards represent your recent past, your immediate present, and your soon-to-be future. What cards are drawn for past and present hold clues on what recent events are going to play a part in dictating the future prediction, giving you a chance to possibly alter your fate if you can decipher what the cards are trying to tell you. That's not to say that the cards are always a warning, though. Sometimes it tells of possible good fortune or just in upcoming change. Simple enough?
And let me guess, these cards are going to have vague enough meanings that they can apply to just about anything, right?
Not so, Eve. There are 78 cards in a tarot deck, and each card has 2 meanings based on whether you pull it upside down or not. That's 156 different unique possibilities.
And who exactly are we doing a reading on, again? If this is tied to specific people's futures, how is this supposed to help us at all in our amateur investigation?
Well, it's quite simple, Eve. I'm going to read the future of the demon.
Okay, so let's say for a moment that I buy into all this, which I don't. Isn't interacting with demons the main thing you're not supposed to do? Like, every horror movie with a Ouija board involved has made it clear that it's a bad idea. This is how you get possessed.
Well, according to my source, in order to be possessed, you have to be weak-willed, in an unstable mental state, or willingly invited in.
What if the demon has different ideas on what inviting it in means? You're inviting it to interact.
Eve, I'm touched by your concern.
Not concerned, Finn. Just trying to keep your logic consistent.
Fine then. To any extraplanar entities, demonic hellspawn, ghosts of horny serial killers, or other spooky things that exist in this vicinity. Just because I do this reading does not mean you have permission to jump inside me like a meat suit and use me like a flesh puppet to carry out your dastardly wicked agenda. Happy, Eve?
Finn, just do the reading already.
I will take your begrudging tolerance as enthusiastic optimism
No.
and continue forward. First card representing the past. The Fool. What's so funny?
Oh, the demon just called you an idiot.
Once again, your sarcastic remarks only show just how uncultured you are, Lady Killjoy. The Fool is the first card in the Major Arcana suit, and each card in the Major Arcana tells the story of the Fool. At the beginning of the parable, the Fool is a man who wants for nothing, but is in no position to grow as a person. And so he gives up all his worldly possessions and begins on a journey of self-discovery, traveling the world and encountering many wonderful and terrible sights. Normally, it's a card that marks innocence or the beginning of a journey.
So the first card you pulled, while giving a tarot card reading to a demon, means innocence?
Well, that's what it normally means anyway. The card I pulled was also upside down. Upside down cards have inverse meanings, so while the Fool right side up means innocence, new beginnings, free-spiritedness, and all that jazz, the upside down Fool represents recklessness, impulsiveness, and possibly taking advantage of someone's innocence and naivete.
Okay, the last bit sounds like a demon. Carry on.
And for the present, we have the Lovers in the upright position.
Ooh, are things getting spicy down in hell?
It's hell, Eve. Everything's spicy in hell. Much like the Fool, the meaning of the card isn't as literal as it appears, though. The Lovers simply represent a partnership or a union. It doesn't have to be romantic, though it certainly can be. And I must say, Eve, if I'm reading this right, then I think this is very troubling.
Oh, please. Do go on.
Taking advantage of someone? A union or partnership? I hate to say this, Eve, but I think that our demonic friend has found a new host. If they aren't possessed already, I'm afraid they soon will be.
Oh no, whatever will we do?
Unfortunately, Eve, there's nothing we can do at this point. This reading is for the past and present. It's already set in stone. The best we can do is hope for the future to turn out better. And according to this, the future is the Eight of Swords in the upright position.
Go fish?
Joke all you want, Eve, but that means that this story couldn't have a happier ending. The Eight of Swords in the upright position means failure and defeat. It seems if things keep going along without anyone intervening, then the demon will be vanquished.
Hooray! Mankind is saved, all thanks to your tarot card reading.
If you would like to purchase my skills as a diviner or exorcist, please send money to— Stop throwing cookies at me!
Stop being dumb.
You've knocked all my cards everywhere,
Stop
Eve!
whining, I'm sorry. Here's your, tower.
Oh, God. You would pull the card that signifies destruction and ruin, wouldn't you?
Did I pull it if I just knocked it onto the floor?
Tarot works in mysterious ways, Lady Killjoy. And so we conclude the Occult Corner. Moving on, what leads are we following up on next week?
If the town truly wants to forget, this might be a long shot, but if the deputy that found the bodies is still on the force like you said he was, it might be worth reaching out.
I guess we can contact him?
What's with that face?
Nothing. You're right. He'd be a good person to talk to.
Honestly, Finn, you have the confidence to get on this microphone and shout to the world demons exist. Aren't the least bit bothered by getting up on stage in a catsuit 3 separate times, but talking to a person in uniform makes you antsy?
Yeah, fine. I'll see if I can contact the guy.
Well, everybody, that's our show for the day. Thank you all for tuning in once again, and we'll see you all next week with hopefully more interviews, more suspects, and a deeper look into both Isabella Schmidt and Elliot Quinn.
Thanks, as always, to Professor Hannessy and the theater department for letting us use this space, and also for this gloriously 80s picture that he provided. Honestly, what were people thinking in the 80s? What is that hairdo even called?
I've no idea, but it's giving Flock of Seagulls a run for their money.
In any case, we hope you all had a good time. So long,
Farewell.
and remember, never burn your bridges when there's a story afoot.
What?
Good night!
Fuck. Fuck.
Eve!
Fuck. 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 You just finished listening to Englewood After Dark, Episode 2, starring Dennis Altman as Finn Nightingale, Hannah Brown as Eve Pemberley, Corey Curler as Burning Bridges, James Lorenz as Ludwig Schmidt, Lyle Michael Pepperell as Nigel Hannessy, and Osty Hobbs as Charles Huntington III. On-air music provided by the talented Ethan, opening music by Nicholas Gasparani, written and sound designed by Hannah Brown, Dennis Altman, and A. Rose. Find out more about Englewood After Dark at our website, englewoodafterdark.com.